If you've spent 2024 procrastinating, doom scrolling, watching garbage content, eating garbage food, not achieving your goals, then this is the video for you. 2025 is nearly here and most people believe that this is the year that they're going to flip their lives around. But the truth is that 90% of the people that you see who are going to be posting pictures with captions saying "New Year, New Me" are probably going to continue living their lives exactly the way that they have been living. I say this because I used to be that type of person, the person who was not living up to his potential, had poor mental health and was just underperforming in all areas of life. But that is not who I am anymore. I was able to transform myself into someone who now reads books, lifts weights, works on his side hustles, trains martial arts 6 days a week, and I did all these things while excelling academically and working as a software engineer at a Fortune 500 company. You see, the reason why I was able to make this transformation possible was because I had now rewired my brain for success. And in this video, I'm going to show you the exact protocols that I followed to make this possible. So let's get right into it. I remember as a teenager, each New Year's Eve, I would think to myself, okay, Jibreal, I'm getting a new year, I'm getting a clean slate, and this year around, I'm going to do great things. I'm going to journal, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to eat healthy, I'm going to lift weights at the gym, I'm going to be that popular kid at school. I'm basically going to be Jibreal 2.0. I'm going to reinvent myself. But what would actually happen is that I would start the year strong, like the first 1 or 2 weeks, I would be on point. However, as soon as that new year, new me motivation ran out, I was back to living the life that I had always lived. And after this happening for multiple years in a row, I kind of understood that this approach of new year, new me does not really work long term. You see, your brain has this ability to rewire itself based on the input that it receives from the outside world, and you capture this input through your senses, your sense of touch, your sense of smell, your sense of sight. For example, there's this kid who plays soccer for 200 days in a row. This kid is eventually going to get better at soccer. His brain is now rewired, optimized for soccer. He's going to kick the ball better, he's going to dribble the ball better, he's going to do tricks with the ball. And the best part is he's not going to be consciously thinking about these things. All these behaviors are somewhat automated thanks to his brain rewiring. And once your brain has rewired itself for a particular activity, that activity becomes your identity. And once something becomes your identity, it becomes easy to do. It becomes easy to begin. So for example, that kid whose brain is rewired for soccer, for him, just getting to another soccer match is not a big deal. To him, it's as easy as brushing his teeth because he's been doing it for so long and his brain is just so efficient at doing it. He does not have to think about the shoes he's going to wear, the type of jersey he's going to put on, what's going to be the weather condition. Nah, he doesn't care. So the reason why I and most others like me would fail with this whole new year, new me thing is because we had not rewired ourselves to these new behaviors. We still have the brain wiring of our previous behaviors. And once this new year, new me motivation would run out, we would default back to our previous behaviors. Because the truth is that motivation is a limited resource and it is bound to run out. And relying on raw motivation alone to make long-term changes, it doesn't work. So once I'd understood this principle of forming an identity by rewiring your brain, I no longer immediately started off an activity with great intensity. For example, previously each New Year's I would just head on to the gym, do a 60-minute workout and then come back and read 40 pages of a book, and then this would last for a couple of days before I would crash and burn. Now what I started doing was that I started establishing a base. I started building up an identity. So I would go to the gym, maybe spend just 20 minutes in and out, just so that my brain rewires itself and that thing becomes part of my identity. Instead of reading 40 pages, I would then read 2 pages of a book. And I know on paper this seems kind of stupid, like, bro, what is 20 minutes going to do for me? Or what is 2 pages of a book going to do for me? But neurologically speaking, these doses, these micro doses of the activities that you're doing, they are actually rewiring your brain and making you more efficient at them. So basically these behaviors become easier to do. They become more automated the next time you do them. And that is the truth to consistency. Making the behaviors as automated as possible. Like after microdosing on these activities for like 60 days, going to the gym had become a reflex action. Like at 4 p.m. I just knew, my body just knew I had to walk over to the gym. I did not have to debate myself. I did not have to list the pros and cons. And once this behavior was now part of my identity, like I knew that I could go to the gym even with my eyes closed and I could start reading whenever I wished to. Now is the time when I actually started stepping up the intensity. So instead of like 20 minutes in the gym, I would now spend 30 minutes. Then a couple of weeks later, I would spend 45 minutes. From reading 2 pages to 5 pages to 7 pages to now being able to read for hours. This way, when you initially focus on consistency and gradually build up intensity, you realize that you don't have to artificially motivate yourself and push yourself towards the activity, but rather now the activities are going to pull you towards them. It's going to feel natural and it's going to feel automated. It's going to feel like, yeah, this is what I do. I don't know how else to spend my time. This is my bread and butter. And so this is something that you need to watch out for. I see people getting fired up on January 1st and they begin to make earth-shattering efforts at tasks and they burned out. When you see other people sprinting, do not get caught up in that. Understand that habits are marathons. Spend your energy wisely. Build up the pace, build up the consistency, and then ramp up the pace. So if you're lucky enough to be watching this video a couple of months or a couple of weeks before 2025, sit down, take out a journal and actually note down the kind of behaviors or the habits that you want for yourself in 2025. For example, if you are someone who wants to learn how to code 3 hours a day in 2025, like that's your goal, that, hey man, I'm going to dedicate this year to just learning software engineering. Start microdosing on your 2025 target right now. Start learning how to code for 20 to 30 minutes a day, just so that you get into the habit of sitting down, opening your laptop, following the lectures, coding a bit, learning the syntax. Using this way of just microdosing on the activity is going to get you a good foundation for 2025 when you can actually ramp up the pace. And now you might think that neuroplasticity is amazing, it leads to good things, but there is a bit of a dark side to this. What if you have rewired your brain to be used to or be addicted to something that is not really good for you? It could be browsing through TikTok, it could be pornography, it could be being addicted to fast food, weed, alcohol, you name it. Your brain actually has the potential to get hooked to negative things as well. And just like you can't build up positive long-term behaviors just using raw motivation alone, you cannot give up these addictive bad habits that you've been doing for years just by using raw motivation alone. Like I personally had tried to quit these bad habits using raw motivation alone. So I would last for like 2 or 3 days. I would be really motivated that now I'm not going to scroll, now I'm not going to play video games, now I'm not going to look at pornography. But then eventually when you get bored, when stressors hit you, when your motivation depletes a bit, you find yourself back being hooked to these things. And this was perhaps the worst phase of my life when I found myself constantly relapsing to these negative habits. And it was quite depressing, it was quite frustrating. So during this phase, I really started researching about behavioral psychology, about how to quit negative behaviors. And I came across this book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And in this book, the author talks about this principle of making bad habits difficult to perform. It pretty much means that you need to add barriers between you and that activity that you do not wish to perform. For example, you could be someone who checks his notifications or scrolls through TikTok quite often. What you need to do is basically uninstall the app, and that is going to serve as a barrier between you and the activity. So the next time you subconsciously lift your phone, you are going to have to reinstall the app and then sign up, and this is going to act like a barrier. It's going to be a disincentive. You wouldn't want to have to install the app and go through the trouble of signing up. You would rather not do the activity. So I applied this principle to all the behaviors that I wanted to quit in 2025. I made a list of all of them and I came up with barriers that I could have for all of them. For my fast food addiction, I decided that, you know what, there was this app, fast food delivery app, that I would use a lot. I uninstalled it, deleted all my social media apps to stop my scrolling addiction. I also packed up my video games, kept it in a box high up in a cupboard. I knew I had to now rewire it just to get 1 hour of gaming session in. Just by using this principle alone of adding barriers, I was able to reduce the frequency of these negative behaviors by a good 30 to 40%. However, this does not work for every single kind of activity, because the main principle behind this protocol is basically that humans follow the path of least resistance, and if you increase the resistance of a path, you are less likely to follow it. Unless there is a huge reward waiting at the end of the path. And some activities like eating junk food or watching pornography, they release a huge amount of dopamine, and this dopamine will actually make you go through that rough path. Even when I sometimes uninstalled these food delivery apps, I would still have that temptation to actually reinstall them, and I would actually go through the trouble of reinstalling them and continuing to order fast food. That meant that I had to deal with these bad habits differently. I had to now address the root cause of these bad habits. For example, any bad habit that you're into, it could be drinking or watching porn. These habits typically release excessive amounts of dopamine into your brain, and eventually over a period of time, your brain seems to expect this amount of dopamine. It seems to want this, and it remembers these activities that gave it that much dopamine. And when you stop doing these behaviors, your brain demands the dopamine back, so it starts giving you cravings. And it is these cravings that were the root cause of my failures. They were the root cause of why I used to relapse over and over again. No matter how much of that new year, new me motivation I had, it eventually used to be chipped away by the cravings. But what if I told you that there was a way that you would never actually feel the cravings of all your bad habits? Like, think about cocaine, for example. Do you miss cocaine? Like, do you have cravings for cocaine? Well, the answer is no, you don't, because you haven't done cocaine before. Your brain has no memory of it. At least I hope so. And this is exactly how you're going to feel about all these other habits once you fully understand this protocol. Like, think about it. How easy would it be to quit a behavior if there were no cravings for that behavior? This is exactly what fasting does to you. Fasting is basically not eating for long durations of time. When you actually are deep into a fast, your body begins to start detoxifying itself. It basically starts doing all these house cleaning tasks. It's almost like hitting the factory reset switch on your body and your mind. I started doing something called OMAD. It stands for 1 meal a day. So I was pretty much fasting for like 23 hours, and in like 1 hour I used to consume a large meal. Now you might think that, oh, this is pretty gruesome or this is unhealthy. But the truth is that after doing this for around 3 or 4 days, once my body had finally adapted to the fast, there were like a couple of awesome things that I discovered about fasting. First thing I noticed about myself when I completed these fasts was that my ability to say no to instant gratification had increased a lot. Like, I felt a lot more disciplined and in control of myself. And the reason is that we have a region of the brain that is like responsible for generating willpower. This is called anterior mid-cingulate cortex. And the cool part is that you can actually grow this region of the brain. You can make it stronger. And one of the ways to make it stronger is by not doing the things that you actually want to do. And this is exactly what fasting is about. Fasting is about denying yourself from food. And imagine denying yourself for food for hours in a day. And that is why my willpower, my discipline, my ability to control myself and say no to quick pleasure, it increased tremendously just a couple of days after fasting. The second thing I discovered while I was fasting was that I experienced little to no cravings for all these things. Like, I had been someone who was addicted to junk food and I couldn't go like 2 or 3 days without it. But when I was fasting for like a couple of weeks, I absolutely had no cravings for it whatsoever. And anyone who's been addicted to sugar or porn or any of these highly stimulating things knows what it's like to experience craving. It's like these urges, like ants crawling up your skin, and you feel agitated and irritated without them. None of these symptoms seem to exist when you are into a fast. It's almost like those regions of your brain that are responsible for like generating those cravings, it's like they get turned off. And once those regions get turned off and they're not constantly chipping away at your motivation, you can go for long periods of time without having to indulge in quick pleasures. And this gives your brain enough time to rewire itself and not be addicted to these things. Lastly, I realized that when I was fasting, my overall mood and motivation levels were quite high. Like, when I used to consume instant pleasure, even though I used to feel good in the moment, right after that moment had passed, I would feel dull and I would feel like a dip in my mood for the rest of the day. But once I was fasting, my motivation and my mood were up once again, and I did not feel like artificially stimulating myself with pleasure. And the best part is I observed all of these changes within a week or two after fasting. That's because fasting increases the neuroplasticity of your brain. It pretty much makes it super malleable, so you adapt to new behaviors and give up old habits really, really quickly. If you like want to work with me to set up good productive habits and want to break free from all your destructive habits of the past, then make sure that you click on the link in the description and book a one-on-one call with me. In this call, we'll actually sit and discuss where are you in life, what your goals are, and how I can help you achieve your goals.